Great. Okay. Next up, we've got a great discussion with Jackie Reeses and Allison Barr. Super excited to have you both here today. We've heard from a lot of SMB tech leaders this morning, and I think you'll both offer a really unique perspective. Jackie, you've had kind of incredible success at Square, and Allison, you're doing really awesome things at Fast. And as I said, you definitely win with the background so far today. So really excited to hear from both of you. Maybe I'll start, if you guys could both just give a quick background intro. Jackie, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Jackie Reeses. Nice to see everyone. Spent a long career on Wall Street after going to Wharton at University of Pennsylvania. Ran part of a very large private equity firm for most of my career, and then came to California almost 8 years ago now to be the Chief Development Officer at Yahoo, and then built the lending business at Square and then the banking business. And so I recently announced I'm leaving. I'm going to be investing for myself and staying connected with my friends at Square, and obviously GGV.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, Allison.
Great. Nice to hear from everyone. My name's Allison Barr. I am the co-founder and COO at Fast. We're building one-click checkout for the internet. Before Fast, I was at Uber for 5 years, working on payments and financial services. And then I'm also a pretty active angel investor on the side.
Great. Allison, maybe we'll start with you and kind of how Fast came about, what's the mission behind Fast, and what do you see as really the big opportunity ahead for SMB?
Sure. So Fast came about, I joined almost exactly a year ago. I had initially met my co-founder Dom as a potential investor in the company. I had wanted to initially get into venture capital, invest in fintech companies, and I had written an investment thesis called Frictionless Finance, which was about all the different ways I thought you could reduce friction in payment flows to add business value based on my experience at Uber, because I launched our instant payment product there for drivers and was heavily involved in sort of global payments strategy. So I met Dom and he was basically building my investment thesis in real life. And I ended up connecting him with Jan Hammer at Index, who led our pre-seed round about a year ago. And then Dom circled back with me and convinced me to join the company full time. So it's been awesome since then.
That's a great story. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we launched about 6 weeks ago on BigCommerce. So now any BigCommerce seller can actually integrate Fast in about 30 minutes and have one-click checkout on their platform. We got some early results last week, and we've actually seen an uplift in conversion rate, which is really exciting. So basically any BigCommerce store who doesn't have Fast installed is losing sales every single day because of this significant uplift in conversion. So then next up, we'll be integrating with additional e-commerce platforms and then also building for direct integration so that any site, no matter how big they are or sort of what business they're in, can integrate Fast.
That's awesome. Congrats. Good serendipity too with that story. And Jackie, maybe some historical perspective as well, from your time at Square over the years. How have you seen SMB's attitude toward access to capital and adoption of technology change? Do you think that we're in a different time today in terms of how SMBs are leaning in than we were even a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think COVID took 3 years and compressed it into 3 months. And I think there's such significant change that happened for small businesses and their use of technology. And it took those that might have been sitting on the sidelines and put them right in the forefront of activity, exploring what options they had in order to survive. I think there are 3 things that happened as a result of the dramatic shift in need to have online technologies. I think first it changed SMB's priorities. And so before they could get away with analog systems, they could get away with disconnected systems, and maybe even systems that weren't mobile. And I think that completely changed with contactless payments, with the need for agility and mobility. And so it was pretty dramatic. And so you saw the benefit of that achievement seen in the results of many of the players that support SMBs. And you also saw it in the end customer, who clearly were able to evolve and pivot in an absolute crisis and pivot quickly. I think you also saw an interesting dynamic around managing cash flow and the need to be able to think through services that go beyond just core payments. And so those that were able to access cash flow in order to fund through the downturn had far more higher probability of being able to succeed through the worst of the crisis. And so I think both of those dynamics created a very different profile for what SMBs were looking for with their software providers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you think, I guess, where to both of you, where do you think the bar is now? You know, what is required of SMBs to be great for SMB merchants, whether that's in the payment space or, you know, kind of just more broadly, like what do consumers expect and how should SMB merchants think about like going from where they are today to great?
I can start. I think there are two dynamics, and Allison touched on one of them around a fast click. One is the notion of omnichannel commerce. You want to be able to buy on your website, buy on an app, or buy in store. And I think the fluidity around a single account, a single way to fulfill commerce, whether it be in person or online, is absolutely critical. And even the smallest merchants are figuring out that capability matters a lot. And then the second is ease of execution. There shouldn't be friction in the checkout process and the transaction. And anywhere there's friction for a consumer, you're just going to lose conversions for a sale. And that could start with something as basic like a credit card, which is how Square got started, or it could be the application and the UI around pixels on a page and how that converts and is easy. But I think the expectation is so high now because it's easy for consumers that I think those that aren't using the most sophisticated technology, and it doesn't have to be something that's complicated to integrate, but those that aren't using the most sophisticated technology will look weaker in comparison to peers, again, local shops that have adapted to online standards.
Yeah, I think there's two different parts that I think about. One is I think before being online was a choice, and you saw the more sophisticated retailers were investing in a lot of different channels and had online presence and so on. But they didn't have to do online. They didn't have to do online delivery. They didn't have to do a lot of these things, and they were able to sort of get by even though they may not have been growing as quickly. I think now it's just sort of it's needed to sort of set up and survive as a business, that to have different channels and to have some investment in digital, no matter sort of what type of store or how big you are. So, and with that, I think there's just a ton of acceleration in the technology space and digitizing. A lot of the bigger retailers as well are moving much more quickly to online and e-commerce. I think the CEO of Nike is from ServiceNow. I think that just shows like these are becoming technology companies. And if technology is not like a core priority and not a key part of the business, it will be much harder for them to grow and do really well. I think another part is around branding and having an online presence in a lot of like different social channels. I think it's hard to get, like, people are living on their computers and on their devices now. So it's like, how do you get top of mind for people? And a lot of that means you have to go to where they are in social networks and different social settings. So I think that's becoming another thing that companies and small businesses especially are finding that they really have to invest in to really thrive.
This isn't expensive for SMBs though. They could easily adopt a very simple payment and point of sale solution from a handful of companies, Square being one fabulous one. This doesn't have to be an overly complicated, paralyzing scenario. And I think the agility of systems like a Square makes small businesses on par or better than larger companies who have antiquated enterprise systems. And so I do think there's a power to having something very simple, but also something that is agile enough to operate in a contactless payments, in an online mobile way now, that from a branding point of view, from a profile point of view, from a customer connectivity point of view, is a really great opportunity to build relationships for even the smallest SMBs.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, how do you think about, so of course, kind of digitally native SMB merchants or those who are going live in today's environment, agree, definitely don't have, are thinking about this and leaning in. What about SMB merchants who are still trying to make that shift, and who might just, need a little help with onboarding or a little more education around kind of making that jump? What do you guys, does, I guess, Square or Fast provide any community services or community merchants, a community of merchants, or resources to kind of help or educate merchants as to why, really like the power, as you said, Jackie, of getting into this mode?
I think the best thing a small business can do is ask other small businesses. Walk around the neighborhood and see what other entrepreneurs do. And I think just by understanding what the limitations are and what the strengths are, by asking questions, you'll get great answers. And so it could be walking in a restaurant and finding out that a bartender's biggest frustration is that they can't keep tabs open for more than 2 hours. And you ask yourself, well, is that relevant for me? Or it could be, doctor's offices asking questions about how HIPAA is applied in any scenario. And I think, usually small businesses are very willing to share feedback, and it doesn't hurt by walking around your own town and your own peer group and asking questions and just being really curious about how things work. I honestly believe that's the best way to do it, and figure out what you should integrate, and then go deeper into online tutorials and tutorials from a lot of these companies. Interestingly, if a company has an intensive onboarding process, you have to ask questions about how complicated it is to use. And so I don't see having a onboarding experience where you actually have to call someone as necessarily being a good thing. I think if you can figure it out on your own and make the experience kind of magical, that in its own right can be a great way to know that you have a system that's probably pretty intuitive.
Yeah, one other idea too is to do cold outreach to brands that you admire or that you looked up to, maybe like companies or businesses that are one step ahead of where you are, and sort of what businesses are you attracted to as a consumer, and then you can sort of build relationships with people there and ask what their tech stack looks like and what processes and tools they're using, because word of mouth is still one of the very best ways to learn about new things.
Yeah, definitely. Allison, I guess one quick question on Fast. Frictionless payments or frictionless anything really sounds much better than the current way of doing things. Where do you guys think you'll go beyond big commerce?
Yeah, so our next integration will be WooCommerce, and our goal is to enable any business to really easily enable one-click checkout on their platform. I think there's a lot of opportunity to increase conversion of paid advertising by directing people directly to product pages, and our button is directly on product pages. And after you use it one time, then any other website that uses Fast, you can check out with one click. So it's pretty magical in that regard. As far as like where we're going in the future, I think one big area is identity. When you check out the first time, you're entering your address and your payment information. And our goal is that if you move addresses or you get a new credit card, that Fast is the one place that you update that information, which scales with you across businesses. Because right now, one of the core problems is your data is stored in a silo with almost every business that you interact with. So our goal is to be that source of truth, which will really unlock a lot of value for both consumers and businesses. Another key part is post-purchase experience. So while we are processing payments, another key differentiator with Fast is that we're pulling in all of the SKU level order data. So we don't just know how much people spend at a store, but we know exactly what you bought there. So with that, we already have a dashboard where you can track all of your Fast purchases, and we have delivery tracking emails, and you can download receipts. And you can actually go to the dashboard and reorder items that you previously purchased with one click. So you don't have to go back to the website to buy things. And there's a lot of other features we want to build on top of there to continue to add more value for consumers, like returns and refunds. And there's a lot of things. But it can sort of become like the Amazon for the rest of the internet, and where you can go to track all of your purchase information.
That's awesome. Great. And I guess so much data is being generated, and you're also giving kind of power back to the merchants in terms of data visibility. And Jackie, same at Square. I guess, how have has there been any education process around, kind of unlocking the power of this data for the merchants, and actually putting this in their hands?
It's hugely powerful, and I think it's something that's demanded, and it could be something as simple as a daily sales receipt. It could be SKU level data or customer data. I think the ability to go from analog to digital and have those observations and insights is absolutely critical, and I think that's part of the power of SaaS-based point of sale systems. Even if you told a coffee shop that they sold almost as much coffee from 3 to 4 p.m. as they did in the morning, like some of those observations would change the way they staff, or how many transactions are they doing within an hour. I think at all level, I'm describing very micro level in-store commerce, but at all level, the observations are incredibly powerful in order to know how to have any visibility on your business and how to staff it, run it, market it, find customers. I think that the power is across the entire spectrum of revenue and expense benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think creating a better experience for the consumers for sure, and then also really helping merchants power their businesses in a smarter way, which I think helps them lean in even more and really push the power of the technology. I guess to both of you, what now, as we mentioned, kind of COVID, very special time. And as Allison mentioned, it's no longer a choice to be online. Everything's happening digitally these days. Any advice that you would give to, I guess, both merchants and then also other SMBTech founders who are creating technology to power SMBs, of how to take advantage of this unique time period, or what have you guys seen work as tailwinds for you?
Yeah, I think for small businesses, they need to protect their downside, stay alive. Honestly, there's a dynamic right now where, particularly as people think about what to do pre-holidays, that you could either try to swing for the fences and go for the upside or stay alive. And I think the unknown surrounding the health environment has such a big question mark on it. Your business doesn't die from having slightly less revenue. It dies from not protecting your downside. And so I think in environments like this, with small businesses where the mismatch between revenue and expenses can be so great, I would be very cautious into the holiday and think through making sure to get through to the other side of a lot of exogenous factors that are out of your control. And so you can control how to manage your cash flow more tightly. You can control how you plan for the holiday season. You can't control what's going to happen over the next 6 months with COVID. And so, that's the stance, if I were a small company, that I would want to take, just to make sure that you could get through to the other side, where you have more stability in the overall macroeconomic environment.
Yeah, a couple other things I would say. First, continue to build relationships and keep conversations going with your customers. I think talking to your customers and people in your network is still one of the fastest ways to get feedback, and you're able to quickly understand what people's heads are at, like what they're thinking, and sort of figure out how to build the right products for people, and also to meet them where they are, like where are they spending most of their time, and sort of how can you get their attention. Also, another thing would be focus, especially with being online. There's like so many different channels you can test. There's all these new tools. Like people are probably getting so many different marketing emails about things to test. And maybe it's just focusing on a couple things to start, so that people don't overwhelm themselves with too many new tools and technology that might be overwhelming or make them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And any advice for founders? I think Allison, yours was maybe a little bit more geared toward founders. Jackie, any advice that you would have for founders of SMB tech companies, as they think about actually selling into the SMBs at this moment?
Ease of use. I think the mind share required around complexity is not going to be a successful strategy. And I think making products that are easy to use, intuitive, and simple in this environment where there's such a demand for attention, I would stick to something very simple that has a huge need and keep it very, very simple. And so that's where I would focus. In today's environment, I see the banking industry as one that will be almost completely disrupted in the next 20, 25 years with companies that look like Fintechs. And I think step by step, founders will find lots of opportunities to disrupt features of the banking system that are not geared to the 21st century. And go problem by problem through what is the biggest pain point and evolve from there. There's so much to tackle. You could get lost and paralyzed in the breadth of opportunity, but focusing on the one micro problem that you can absolutely see how difficult it is and how you can change change the problem set with what you're creating. I think, don't get lost in the fray and the opportunity set.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, especially today. Will you be investing in SMB, Jackie, or do you have an area that you'll be looking at?
So I have been angel investing for years, and obviously I spent a career doing investments from very small all the way up to very large multi-billion-dollar transactions. And so I obviously spend a lot of time in Fintech, and I spend a lot of time in commerce generally, both in the United States and abroad. And so I'm going to continue to try to find opportunities either as minority investments or majority investments where I think I can add value to the team, add value to the idea, or help amplify the growth of what a founder is trying to achieve.
That's great. And Allison, I guess you got a lot on your plate with Fast. You guys have a lot of integrations coming, a lot of good things. I guess if you would give advice, kind of what were you guys most focused on, or even you as a founder specifically, kind of how do you think about the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, it's a lot about like setting the high level strategy and making sure you have a really clear roadmap that the entire team and company can align around. And then it's like all about execution. So hiring like the very best people and making sure that you're making a lot of progress towards the goals you set. I wrote like the initial sort of high level strategy for Fast about a year ago, and luckily it hasn't changed much. So it's luckily it's really good to think about like both the shorter term and the longer term. So think about what you want your company to be in the next 3 to 5 years and sort of work backwards from there to set shorter milestones.
I think it's an amazing time to start a business, right? Like their business starts have never been better, and both labor costs and rent are interesting opportunities right now. And so it just feels like an amazing time to pick an idea, pick a problem, understand it, and go. And for companies like Fast, they're in such an interesting space. The opportunity, they've got the wind at their back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I think we're still at the early days. And actually, 2020 has been great in that regard. I do think you've seen a lot of new businesses start, a lot of businesses, as you said, Jackie, kind of accelerate their adoption of technology. And what would have happened in 3 years has now happened in one. So I think businesses will emerge from this year and this time period stronger than ever. And I think also some, people are kind of reconsidering what their mission is and what they want their life to look like. And SMBs are a really big part of that. And I think the world actually is really rallying around them. So it's super exciting to see that.
Yeah, I also hope that we see a lot of companies started outside of California.
I think we will.
And there's so much opportunity to truly understand your customer that happens outside of New York and California. Maybe add Florida and Texas in there for a little creativity. But the opportunity set across the country, it has never been better. And so I do hope we see a lot of companies started, everywhere across the United States. And there are amazing entrepreneurs that can be funded with VC firms. And I think looking outside of a 50-mile radius of Northern California will enable a lot of really interesting opportunities, understanding the problem of 49 other states.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't thank you both enough. And also just incredible what Square and Fast are doing for small businesses around the world. So super excited to, Allison, follow your journey as you keep going. And Jackie and Allison, thank you both so much for spending time with us today. I know the audience, they appreciated it. So thanks for joining.
Absolutely.